So I've got 4 sections, basically an intro to me a little bit. There's an awesome bio in there, and then a little intro to StitchFix within that section so you have some context to what I'm talking about. The second one is like 4 real tactics that we've used at StitchFix that I think have helped us be a successful company to date. The third thing is 2 examples of the impact of those tactics, and then I'll close with just 3 things that I think it would have been nice to know, or I kind of knew intuitively before I started StitchFix, but it's been great to learn and be reaffirmed as we've gone. So I thought I'd start with a quote. I was meeting with an entrepreneur recently, and they said this to some extent, which is there's a massive shift going on in retail, and I think it represents a large chunk of GDP, and no one really understands how fast or how deep it is. And I would posture and include me and our opportunity at StitchFix in this too, that many of us will not capitalize on that opportunity because we won't differentiate enough. You've heard it all morning and early afternoon that you can't and shouldn't spend a lot of time trying to out Amazon or out eBay. So you have to do something different. And I think you should have a really high bar as entrepreneurs on what that difference is. And so what I want to talk about a little bit is how StitchFix is trying to be different, but give specific tactics for how I think that has worked for us so far. There we go. So what is StitchFix? StitchFix today is a personalized shopping or styling service for women. Women come to the site, they fill out a style profile of 30+ questions. From that, we can derive your style. We use algorithms, and we also use some human intervention. And from those 2 major factors, sort of art and science, we will send you a box of 5 things that should work for you. You get to try on those 5 things in the comfort of your own home, the context of your own closet. In many cases, at least in my household, it's a family experience. My daughter gets to participate with my wife, and we all get to weigh in on what should work for her. And hopefully she keeps a couple things, and she sends back what she doesn't want. We actually, Katrina Lake, who's the CEO and founder, was recently on Fox Business and was talking about, the analyst said, well, don't you want everyone to keep all 5 items? We actually don't. It's a great business model if you keep 1 or 2. It really hums when you get to 2. But we actually want to push customers in style preferences that might be a little bit outside their comfort zone, and we learn a lot from what people keep, and we learn almost as much about the model by what people don't keep. And that's why when I get to talk about this, we look at StitchFix and sort of our differentiation against sort of any other retailer or e-commerce player as this great marriage between art and science. So on the left-hand side, we do have a styling algorithm, and it really helps us take structured data and process that really fast and get really smart about how we're going to be a great retailer. And then on the other side, we have humans, stylists, that pick the last 5 things. They process a lot of great unstructured data. Pinterest is a great example. We have clients that create their own StitchFix Pinterest page. Gives us a really good idea of what their style is, and a human can process that a lot faster and a lot more accurately than any algorithm can. Eric Colson, who runs data and algorithms for us, that used to run it for Netflix, I think used to think that his algorithm would be able to take on sort of the combination of the 2, and I don't think he thinks that anymore. Of course, we will A/B test that and see how good Eric's algorithm is, and it's pretty darn good, but we really feel strongly that there has to be this interaction between the human and the science. So 4 tactics that we've used, and some of them are pretty, kumbaya soft in terms of, a lot of the other speakers have talked about hiring the right people. We feel really strongly that that is a specific tactic that's been helpful for us. So I'll run through them quickly. Invest in data science, hire and recruit a great data science leader, ensure that the metrics that are coming out of data science are actually impactful to the business. So many times, they talk about retail as detail, and there are a lot of details in retail, and a lot of it, I don't think, drive true impact in the business. And then what if you can't hire an Eric Colson, or you can't hire someone from Pandora, or you decide you want to invest in that later? What can you do in the short term to be scrappy and still get a lot of value out of data science? So investing in data science, I'll be quick on this. I think it's more a function of what philosophically how you think about data and how you collect that data. And there's a lot of kind of talk in sort of public press about data science and big data and how it's going to change the world. And we believe that strongly too. But we think too many companies spend too much time going after data science without thinking about what problem are you seeking to solve. Jeff Barrett, our CTO, asks that in every meeting, and it gets quite annoying, but it's a really awesome way to make sure that you're held accountable to, if we're going to spend resources or we're going to invest in data science, what problem are you seeking to solve? And in our case, the balance between art and science has really driven a higher average order value in a way that's been great for the business model. The second one is, and I'm going to read through these in detail because they're, I think, very important and have been very important to us. So recruiting a great data science leader. So we have 4 critical rules that I'd like to pass on to you. One is the candidate or the leader can't operate in a box. They can't only be thinking about the science. They have to be sort of working with functional groups, understanding the business function, and not just thinking about the algorithm that they're going to build that's going to be really cool. They have to operate with cross-functionally with all the other business leaders that are driving either top line or bottom line. I feel very strongly about this. They should not have an ego. Again, related to sort of working well cross-functionally, some of data sciences, because it's such a popular thing right now, they command a lot of money. They probably, think pretty highly of themselves in a lot of ways. And there's some that wouldn't work well in our culture. And Eric and his team work very well in our culture because they don't have egos. I think they also have to be great communicators, again, working cross-functionally and trying to really understand the business drivers and building solutions both in algorithms and in business intelligence and analytics. You have to be able to communicate well. You have to be good listeners. And so I would encourage you to find leaders that fall in that camp. And then strong point of view on this, I think your data science leader should report to the CEO or founder of the company. It says a lot about sort of how important data science is to you as a company, and it also makes a really clear tone of that the data science person is equal in terms of title and responsibility and importance as a COO or CFO or a chief merchant or chief marketing officer. Where that's been helpful for us in recruiting the right leader on these 4 kind of critical things is we build data science and algorithmic solutions that actually the business owner feels as much accountability to those solutions as the data science team. And I think that, in turn, has helped us drive great P&L performance for a company that is a pretty early stage company. The third one, sorry, this is a crowded slide, but for those that have access to it, you'll be able to read it in more detail. This just goes back to the point of retail as detail. That is overused in my humble opinion, and it's because brick and mortar retailers for the longest time sort of had way too much detail and way too many reports that were kind of produced daily or weekly and didn't spend enough time trying to understand the true impact and where the impact was. I can say that I was victim of that too. I spent 9 years at Walmart.com. One of the first jobs I had in operations there was overseeing customer service. I went down to our call center and found out, I said, what are the agents held accountable to? And they said, oh, we've got this great dashboard. There's 33 metrics on it, and they're held accountable to that. And I said, can anyone name even 5 of those metrics? And no one could. And I said, well, what are the true drivers of the business? How does it affect profitability, or how does it affect the customer, or how does it affect top line? And no one could answer those questions. And so we started just looking at 2 metrics. First contact resolution and average speed of answer. And that was it. And it helped us really focus our attentions on the things that we thought mattered, both in driving costs down and driving up customer experience. Shrink is one that's my favorite. Every time someone says shrink, I go a little crazy. Shrink is basically lost inventory, sometimes applied to employees taking stuff. And most of the time, people shrink or lost amount is anywhere from, when I was at Walmart, is 3 basis points up to, if you're really bad, 1%. At the early stage of a company, you should be focused on percents. Go get dollars. Don't spend time in basis points and little data points that don't matter. And spend time truly understanding, like Mariah said earlier, about lifetime value or contribution margin and lifetime contribution margin rather than little things that don't matter as much. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that at StitchFix. The last one that I wanted to talk about was, okay, so what if you don't have and don't want to spend the resources, or your board doesn't want you to spend the resources on hiring an Eric Colson from Netflix? What can you do? Well, I'd say really simply, do 2 things. Start with the end in mind and put yourself in the customer's shoes. And ask basic questions about, what are the levers of my business? And making sure that you're creating a data model and collecting data that help drive impact in those areas of the business that matter. The second one is, we're all customers, especially if you're in e-commerce. Ask the questions that you would ask yourself as a shopper. It's pretty simple. In women's apparel, it's about, does it fit? Is it my style? Is it my price point? We asked a lot of questions up front about the shopping experience. What do you like about the shopping experience? Where do you shop? And those are all things that helped us sort of have data input into our model that are now helping us on the back end. But even if you don't have some fancy pants data science team like we do at StitchFix, you can ask those questions, start collecting that data, and making sure that you're tying that data specifically to business levers, either on the top line in revenue or the bottom line in expenses. So 2 quick examples of how we've done it at StitchFix. Sorry that I don't have specific numbers. We're still a private company and not disclosing. But the questions that we ask and the way that we collect data and the way we use data helps us be a better retailer. It's just that simple. The chart you'll see in front of you is just one example of that. It's a chart of inventory turns and how inventory turns at a typical retailer versus our inventory turns at StitchFix. We are, in a lot of ways, a lot better retailer, but it's simple because we ask these questions ahead of time. We understand what our client, what she wants and what style she is. We get a lot of data from the interaction of the client getting the box of 5 things, and again, what she keeps and what she doesn't keep helps us be better about buying decisions and really risk reduce our buys, which allows us to manage inventory. I know there's been a lot of talk about inventory and whether you should own it or not. I have a strong point of view that if you're going to be big, you should own your inventory. Everyone that's been big owns their inventory for the most part. Everyone that's been big also has owned the full customer experience and owns their supply chain. It's just, you can talk to Amazon, you can talk to Zulily, you can talk to Zappos, you can talk to a number of people. Yes, they have dropship vendors, but the majority of what they do is they own the customer experience and they own inventory. The second one is one that's more akin to sort of my background and being in operations for over a decade, is we understand a lot about sort of the back and forth of the customer. And what's amazing is we have a lot of data about things coming back in returns. Most retailers and most e-commerce players, returns is like a pain in the neck. It's not a big part of their business. In our model, because it's a try-on model, it is core to our business. And we spend a lot of time optimizing on that. So up on the screen is a picture of sort of what I call old world and new world. Old world is you get this big cage of stuff from USPS or UPS or FedEx, and it's poly bags with clothes that have been returned. And on the new world, you can only imagine where we have a great understanding of if my wife kept 2 things, the 3 things that she didn't keep, we obviously know price point, we know how successful that item has been, we know the style that item should go out to another client, and it allows you in operations to have a really interesting kind of new way of doing returns, a new way of leveraging your supply chain in a cost-effective way and also in an inventory management way that we don't think other retailers have. So the funny graphic up there is being able to prioritize all those poly bags and the way we process the returns. And in some ways, you can take touches out of the system by having items that go cross-docked or right into another fix right before we would ever put them back into inventory. So that helps us run our model a lot more efficiently, and again, helps us be a better retailer. So what I wish I knew, really quickly, one thing that I thought for sure was going to be fact is that measurements mattered a lot. And of course they do, but one of my favorite examples is, and I am a big Andy Dunn fan and a big Bonobos fan, and appreciate the call this morning. I wore some of my favorite Bonobos pants, but if you'd asked me what my inseam is or how to measure my inseam, I'm in fashion, I don't really know. And so one of the challenges, I think, with measurements is it's hard to scale that. Most people don't know, the suppliers aren't consistent, and so today, I just don't think measurements matter. At some point they might, but in our model, and I think for now, they don't. Everyone has worn this second one out. It is capital intensive. And I knew that. I'd come from Walmart. We owned our inventory. But when you're Walmart.com and you're sort of underneath the mothership of Walmart and you're a little $5 billion thing, which is about what it was when I left, your inventory is a rounding error to the mothership. When you're a startup, inventory matters a lot, and managing that capital well matters a lot. So I would just say that if you're going to own the inventory, which I'm a big proponent of, like Mariah said, manage it well. And the last thing is, and why I joined StitchFix, but it really has been true, is that data can risk reduce the art side or the gut side of retail. If you're buying and you kind of know what your customer already wants and you know their style and you have all these data inputs from the interactions between client and data, you can really take a lot of the art out. Doesn't mean the art goes away, but it just helps you run a better retailer. So probably have time for one question or two questions. Yes?
It's good to focus on a couple of key metrics. What would you suggest as a way of deciding what those metrics are rather than just going by gut feel? Is there a risk that there are unknowns out there, things you weren't aware of that you should care about?
Yeah, I think there are unknowns, but Andy did his blog post I had was one of the 100,000 people he said that read it. He does a nice job of sort of laying out the metrics. I mean, I think it's average order value, gross margin, shipping costs, fulfillment costs, and labor costs, like your fixed labor costs. You will have variable costs in those other ones, but those are the ones I think I would focus on and spend time. But the question was, what metrics do you focus on? And then are there going to be unknowns? There's surely going to be unknowns, but e-commerce is a different distribution channel than normal retail. The metrics aren't that different, and they're not going to be huge surprises, in my opinion, of having been around for a decade plus. All right, I am being yanked off, but thank you guys so much, and have a great rest of their afternoon.